right, we are live. Welcome everybody to the TACBox podcast. I am here with my co-host Dale Martinson, who's fresh off of a crazy marathon run up in South Dakota this last weekend. How you doing, Dale?
Man, I'm good. I mean, you didn't have to leave the state just because I was coming. You could, yeah, I mean, fly into Rapid, and of the three friends I have, like fleeing the state. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, it's funny how that works out because you were coming into Rapid, I was leaving Rapid to go to dog show, and then the day that you flew out, I was driving home,
there you
and I
go.
was like, we missed paths by a few
Yeah,
hours each time.
not Rapid cannot handle both of us being there at the same time.
See, that's the problem. The town would have just crashed and not known what to do with both of us here. There's, oh, the TACBox podcast is in town. We can't handle this. And they would
Exactly.
have been gone. So,
Just keep them separated.
and so you got a little sun. You brought the Texas weather to South Dakota with you. And then you took it away with you, too, because it was really warm while you were here and now it's cold.
Yeah, I was looking at the dates on their stuff because we ran down the Mickelson Trail, and I was like going, wow, every day except the day we were actually running the marathon relay would have been wonderful. Like, woohoo, great. The day we ran, like, started out in the 80s and was in the 90s by the time we got done. And it's like going, yeah, this is not what you're thinking of when you're thinking of South Dakota weather, I mean, in springtime.
But it was kind of that way in Montana, too. We were showing outdoors at a fairgrounds. The fairgrounds was really, really nice. It was probably one of the better fairgrounds I've ever seen. Now, take that with a grain of salt because I haven't seen fairgrounds in every single state. I haven't been to nearly as many as you have. But when I think of fairgrounds, I think of what I see in South Dakota, which is old metal barns and dirt and horse arenas everywhere, and that's pretty much all it is.
That would be a fairground.
Yeah, and this one was like the grass was mown really. I mean, it reminded me of like when you'd watch like the Kentucky Derby, what that looks like. Nice, really nice white buildings, white fence everywhere, green grass. It's cut nice.
Okay. Your little blanket of roses over your chin when you won with it.
No, they didn't do that. And
Okay.
no, 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 that didn't happen.
Still nice, still good.
It's still a good grounds. We were a vendor at this show, and it was a little awkward because the vendor hall was indoors, thankfully, because one of the days it was like 98 degrees. Everybody was dying outside, and we were in the air conditioned building. But it was a little weird because we were the only vendor that actually showed up. So we had this big building all to ourselves. Turned out to be fantastic. It was just a little awkward right away because it was like all the vendors are supposed to be in there. We're the only vendor that shows up. But we just learned to spread out and enjoy the air conditioning and take all the business of people that wanted to come and buy stuff from vendors. And then the last day we moved outside by the show ring, so it's with a couple tables and just put our stuff on that so we could get out of there after groups. But the one day when it was 95 degrees, man, I'm telling you, it was nice to be in the air conditioned building.
Sweet.
It
So
was great.
I'm gonna throw a little plug out there for anybody who's listening. Tyson makes notify in case of emergency car tags that go on your trolleys and your crates and stuff. And whenever you have your dogs on the showgrounds, and it is a AKC rule there, if you leave them, like whether you go to dinner or whatever, and you're going to leave the dogs, come back and get them or whatever, that you should always have that emergency contact. They should have at least two cell numbers and all of that. And Tyson makes those and they look classy and great. You should check out his website, or I don't know if we have a link on the podcast, because I know I'm ordering some for my trolley. And just because if anything happens, dog gets her foot stuck, if anything goes wrong, you want to be able to get hold of the owners. So very cool, very good idea, very forward thinking. Check it out.
So I can't take all the credit because the emergency contact that was your idea. The top part of it. So there's two little spots, and it's like one spot's the emergency contact, which is like Dale's like you should have that. So we made that. The other part of it was your kennel name on that. So you have some branding and advertising for your kennel name. And that actually, so ours says Rapid City, South Dakota on it too. We drew at least four people that came over to us and made conversation based on our trolley sign because they're like, "Oh, you guys are from South Dakota?" Because they could see the name it right there, and it turns out it's like, oh, I'm from Martin, South Dakota, or oh, I was in South Dakota last week. And, so then you just make conversation with people. And then next thing you know, they're standing there at the group ring clapping for you as you're going around because
Hey,
of
it's
a sign on your trolley.
absolutely, absolutely.
So that's not what this episode's about, but hey, it's good to advertise and have your stuff out there because it generates conversation. And I'm not, yeah, we do a U-turn right in front of the airport, just like your mom did. We got this.
We got it. We got it now.
So that was kind of our weekends here a little bit, but today, we had a 12-hour drive home, and it was a lot of time to think and figure out, the whole struggle of AKC points. But one of the things that I spent ample time thinking about is stud services or stud dogs.
Mhm.
And I grew up on the eastern side of South Dakota farming. And in the farm industry or the cattle industry, we showed cows. The stud service is so much different than the dog services. I mean, if you are looking for a stud bull or bull semen or anything like that, is like you literally can go online and flip through a picture catalog of bulls, and then it'll have their semen stuff, all the info about it, and you can just contact them, order the semen, whatever you need to do. And so that got me thinking, is like, well, if I didn't have any boy dogs and I wanted to find some semen to go with one of my bitches, first of all, how do I even go about finding that? Second of all, how do I look at different dogs, different things to figure out? You're not just going to find a boy dog and be like, oh, you have some semen? Cool. I want it for my bitch. It's like, you obviously are looking for type. You're looking for maybe color, size. There's things that you're looking for in a stud dog to bring into your line, obviously. So, what are some resources? How do people go about that? Let's talk about stud dogs, finding a stud dog or finding semen to do artificial insemination. So,
Okay. That's
however
a
you want to
super
go, high overview to start. That's just a big topic.
super good topic though. I mean, it's the before we get going on anything else, the stud services are kind of that's getting the ball rolling. Historically speaking, stud dogs were advertised. If you like have a lot of the breed magazines would go ahead and take advertisements listing the different male dogs they have at stud, listing their notable achievements, their production records. They would list their show wins. They would list availability or particulars, that type of thing. And they would list the stud fee. And the stud fee money was considered to be sweet. It's kind of like part of the reason you pay to show and champion and campaign and all of this was so you would get this great stud dog. People would see his puppies. They would want, maybe come buy a puppy out of him from you, breed their female to him. At one time, we had a dog that we thought was a very exceptional stud dog, and we offered him at it was like I think it was $200 if they sent a champion female, which is usually, but we kind of felt like their best female. 800 for a non-champion female, and to try to encourage people to send their best female to so you get the best puppies out, and you'll go back through there and see that, like in everything else, it's probably not as politically correct now to just I mean, because with the studs offering stud services now, people are a little bit, it's not as free and easy as it once was. It wasn't like, people were just like, they didn't feel like they had to climb into bed with you to send you dog semen. They just kind of like, oh, okay, you want to use them, fine, pay the money, you're good. Now people are, it's a little bit bigger deal. They're a little less likely to want to do it. You have to kind of have a relationship with someone in order to get them to probably do a stud service, but still can be done. But that's something that probably especially people who are starting out that don't have, or maybe don't have a room for a lot of males. Male dogs are great to show, but what if it has all the same faults or all the same pedigree as your females? Then you might have this male, but he might not be right for the bitches you have at that time. That's when you start to need to use stud services. And so that's something you want to start working on right away. right when you start to think like, I'm going to breed, I need to think about what I'm going to do because it's going to be there before you know it. And then it's going to like, boom, be there. And if you don't have it planned out, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, and even if you do have a male dog, this is one of the things. I have two male dogs, and it's just like, oh, I'm not gonna run into needing a new male dog or stud services or anything like that for a long time. And then it's just like, well, what if it produces nothing? What if it doesn't produce? What if it produces bad dogs? Things might change very, very, very quickly.
All the time it changes. All the time. You might have a dog that produces fabulous. And then what happens in about 5 years, your whole kennel is that dog. I mean, you've got daughters, you've got sons, you're line breeding on it. And this dog is like of no value to you because your dogs are so heavily onto this because it's been a wonderful stud. And so you've kept and kept and kept and kept. And so now you are, wow, what do I do? What's life beyond that? I got some semen that was offered to me from a dog that I bred like 25 years ago. And I was like so excited to get that. And I, used that to for breeding, and I've kept back two sons. But the father of that dog sired 25, 26, some 26, 27 champions, and I kept most of them. And so I just like thought to myself, I'll never see a day where I don't have this in my kennel all over. And then all of a sudden one day it was gone. It was like the last generation on the 5 generation pedigree. It's like going, wow. And so I was very excited, especially when you're just getting started. Save, if you have a dog and it seems to be producing well and you think, well, this might, then that might be a long-term investment goal for you, is like have that dog frozen and collected and keep a hold of it. And it's kind of like a little insurance policy because, 15, 20 years down the road, if you're still doing it, you might really wish you had that. I know there's certain dogs I wish I like, gosh, we could go back, that would have been a great move to do. But that's a good case scenario. The other case scenario is you get this dog and you've bred him a couple of times and it just doesn't work. Happens. Maybe for whatever reason. It's like if it's a markings breed, he doesn't produce good markings. You get too many defects. His puppies are big. They're whatever the thing. If it's a small breed and you want, if your stud dog makes all 12-pound puppies, well, then you're like, don't need to use him. I had a wonderful dog, had all the health testing done on that. He made about almost 90% boys. He made a lot of boys. Great dog, wonderful, very healthy. I mean, it's like you kind of go, wow, we're going to breed him and we're going to get 6 more boy puppies and maybe a girl. That's hard to get excited about after a certain point. So your stud dogs will start just more as you use them, they'll start disappearing. And then you'll have and you'll think of, well, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? What's the next step? And so when I start to think about a stud dog, I really want to first I want to see what it's producing. What is it? What do the puppies look like? What was he bred to? Are those like really good bitches or are those kind of marginal? I want to kind of get a little overview, do a little research. How many were in the litter? How many were nice? I mean, that kind of thing. That's kind of a really good kind of get a little feel of the pedigree. What are the strong points? What are the weak points? What do I need to improve on? What are my dog's weak points? Because once you start looking at that, then that gives you a whole nother thing. Is what do you want to change about this dog? I mean, so like your next litter, what do you want to change? What would you like to see in your next litter?
Yeah. That's the question that you have to ask, right? And for me, it's just like at this point in my breeding program, I don't know what I want to see. I want to see what I'm producing. That's kind of the big thing is I want to see what my what my bitches are putting out. I would like to get some size and a little bit, I got some smaller bitches. So that's one of the things I look for is
More coat?
more coat. I mean, yeah, I think in the, that's all very breed specific. And I think this whole conversation is because I think and you'll know this better than me, but I'm gonna reference chin, trying to find a chin stud for me It's just like, where do you even start? But on the black lab side or golden retriever side, there might be stud services all over the place that you can find super easy because it's such a big, well-known breed, and there's a lot of dogs in each litter. You know, there's a higher number of dogs. So if somebody's looking for stud services, what's like where do they even start to try to find stud services? Say they're not even in the dog showing, because I think a lot of what we would say is, well, ask other people that have the dog, and that's super easy when you're at a dog show. But if you're not into showing and you're not doing dog showing, where do people even begin to look for stud services for their breed?
Question. So, number one, if there are puppies advertised for sale out of a particular breed, there is a stud dog involved in that equation somewhere. So anybody that's got puppies has access to a stud dog. So these are some of the people you need to be talking to right off the bat. And then you want to find the people that you kind of relate to, whoever you want to work with, whoever you're kind of on the same mindset with. If you're thinking, someone you get a good vibe from them, then you can start talking to them and say, well, do you, the first question, do you offer stud service? There you go. That's right. And they're going to say, sure, or hell no, which is, more common now than it used to be. But, so if they say, yeah, we offer stud service, what's your stud contract? So when you are paying for a stud service, you are paying for the service. You are not guaranteed anything. It is your responsibility to have your bitch ovulating and ready to be bred. So if you take her and she's not ready and they breed her and she doesn't take, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem. That's a you problem. So part of the thing, because I'm super lazy and I don't want to have to deal with people twice, I would probably go ahead and run progesterone on them myself and go, your bitch is not going to be ready to be bred for 4 more days. So we're just going to keep her and I'm going to have her covered before we go. Cause I don't want to hear from you again. Not until you got your puppies. But that's one thing. What is the guarantee as far as, is there a repeat? So if the bitch, you pay the fee and you pay the fee before when you leave off the bitch, you're paying for the service, not for puppies, the service. In toy breeds, oftentimes we say we're going to offer a live litter guarantee. In toys, one puppy. If you get one live viable puppy that is registerable that you want papers on, then that's your litter. Congratulations. In other breeds, labs, big stuff, they might say that you get 2 or 3 puppies, maybe, that's something to talk about beforehand. The price of the stud fee, that varies breed to breed, varies stud to stud, kind of has a couple of factors. Is this dog a big winner? Because if it's a big winner, his puppies are more desirable. He's probably their people are going to want a higher stud fee. Or if it's an import, it's the top winning dog from Mars. We had to pay Elon all this money to bring it. You're going to pay more money for that. Is this dog, fabulous color, a pedigree that is only to be found in the Himalayas with a group of monks, and I have the only one of this pedigree? You're going to pay more. Uh, all of this stuff is in relation to the fee. And so what the dogs, puppies, and offspring are. Then the next thing you need to do is say, are there any restrictions as to how I sell the puppies? Some people will say, I'm going to breed your female. I'm going to charge you the stud fee. I don't want you to sell any of the puppies on open papers. You have to keep them to have them on open paper. If you sell them, you're selling them as pets. And what they're saying to you is, if you're breeding to my dog, I want you to do a breeding for puppies to keep. That you're wanting to keep and show puppies, not that you're just breeding to sell other people my dogs for less. A lot of people don't like that. Find this out. This is all should be in the stud contract. So for whatever reason, if you don't get your live litter guarantee made, you get a free repeat. Oftentimes they'll say you get one free repeat breeding. Now, sometimes you should also throw in there, can I substitute a different female? Because if that female didn't take, or she's aging out or whatever, can I send a different female, or do I have to wait 6, 9 months for her to come back in and send her again? All of this, and this is, so, this is part of the thing when you're doing this breeding out to someone else's dog. It's more work, it's more effort, but it should be for a higher goal, not just like you're wanting to get puppies to sell.
So it seems like, I mean, there's definitely a lot involved. But what if you have the stud, say I'm contacting you for stud services, how long, like, what's the time frame that you were gonna keep a bitch? I mean, you're not gonna drop off a bitch that's gonna, "Yeah, she comes into season in 2 weeks." I mean, they're boarding and feeding and all the things while this bitch is there, so what are they kinda looking at? Like, a couple days they want it, a week tops?
A good question. Yeah, I have one of my friends, bitches, right now that's been here for since Marshall. Hi, Margaret. Still have her. So yeah, you can abuse your friends a little bit more than you can the average person on the street. Like they don't want to keep your bitch. So generally speaking, what I say is the bitch should start into season. You're going to need to figure out when she sees first blood, first signs of coming in, you need to go, hey, Tyson, I need to breed to your dog. She started bleeding. We're going to run progesterone on her. We're going to know that she needs to be bred this weekend or whatever. And you're going to say, sorry, Dale, I'm gone. And I'm like, okay, I need to find someone else. Or we're going to have your pet sitter's going to do it or something like that. You can need to be very on it. If you're going to involve someone else in breeding your female, you need to bring your A game, and you need to know when your bitch is in. You need to know when she's ready. And you need to go into the next thing. How are we going to do the insemination? So are we going to do A, natural breeding, B, are we going to do an artificial insemination, or C, are we going to do a surgical insemination? All of these things need to be discussed in advance. Now, of course, a good natural breeding with a viable stud dog and all, that's your best. That's your best chance at getting a large, healthy, viable litter of puppies. A well done artificial insemination is okay. That's good. Many puppies are born by artificial insemination. Some breeds are almost exclusively done on artificial insemination. Most of your bulldog breeds, most of those they're all done by artificial insemination. Artificial insemination, I don't want to guess a percentile, but it depends as to how good you are in the testing on your bitch. Because when you have a natural breeding situation, your stud dog kind of gives you yeah, she's ready, and the bitch is receptive. So you kind of taking nature's cue there. Like that, my old Samson dog, my rescue Pyrenees, he goes and sits in front of whoever's run door that's in heat, and I go, yep, she ready. That's having a good stud dog and all that. When you're doing an AI, you're just doing a collection and an insemination. So you don't have any of that Mother Nature giving you green lights. You're just doing it, which is fine as long as you have it. Now, surgical insemination is probably the best. Surgical insemination is awesome. If you are using an older dog, if you are using shipped in semen, either frozen or fresh chilled, surgical if I'm going to spend thousands on a stud service and then hundreds in transport and insemination, I'm going to do an SI because I want it to take. I would say of all of the surgical inseminations we have done is a very high 90s percentage. We've had semen sent internationally on surgical inseminations. It's really good. But of course, frozen semen, you have your sperm count on your stud dogs tells you kind of where you're at as far as where the dog is on its viability. A good stud dog is in the 90s. An okay stud dog is in the 80s. Almost kind of bordering on infertile stud dog is in their 70s. And once you start dropping below that, then that's really coming. When you got talking dogs in there in high 60s, low 70s, those are dogs that can miss easily, you know. And so that's when you need to kind of up it on the other side. Like, okay, rather than to, I'm going to do a surgical rather than to do just a regular AI. Whenever you bring frozen semen back around, you're really got really good semen if it comes back at 60%. That's pretty good, you know. So that's really that's you're doing when you're doing frozen and that kind of stuff, that's for stuff that you want to keep. You're not doing this for, I want to have a big litter of puppies. I'm going to sell some. I'm going to be taking deposits on them. No, you're frozen. That's something that you're doing, hoping to pull something back from time. But as far as like making babies to hopefully have a nice litter to maybe keep something, maybe sell some to friends or whatever you're going to do with them, yeah, then that's your naturals or your regular AIs.
So for those that might not know, what's the process differences between artificial and surgical?
Okay.
Like, how does surgical work? I think artificial, pretty much everybody can gather, but
Well, all right. So we start out about the same, and you're going to collect the stud dog. And however, I'm sure Tyson would be glad to post a video later of that. The when you go to collect your stud dog, the time you go to collect your stud dog for the first time is not when you're hoping to breed them 3 minutes later. You need to like establish this rapport with your stud dog. You know, you need to like have this kind of relationship going on where this is okay, because otherwise he's going to like go, stranger danger, don't touch me. Like, oh no, we're not, and you're like, wow, what are we going to do now? So the time to do this prior to having a bitch in heat, you know, collect them. You can even you can get a really nice little microscope. And I mean, and it's fun. I love sitting here looking at the collections and stuff because I mean, I've done a lot of it. I've seen a lot of it, but it's just not doesn't take it's not rocket science to look and say when they're like sitting there and it's like a glob of toothpaste and there's like just movement and you can barely see in there. And then you'll see the next one, you'll start to see individuals, and then the other ones you'll see stuff and you're like, is that moving? And it's like those are degrees of how good that collection is. So, when you have a dog collected, and if you're going to do it at the vet, they'll usually take a drop and look under the scope and they'll say, hey, that your dog's about 85% or whatever, they'll kind of give you a little thing. Or if you're having semen sent to you, there should be a sheet in there and they'll say, we collected this dog on this time and this time, and it was packaged and mixed with extender and cooled, and it was at this percentile. That's important because I probably wouldn't just be super excited about paying a $2,500 stud fee on something that was collected at 60%. I wouldn't be go, oh, you know, that's not so great, but so that's kind of that. Then a surgical insemination, bitch is put under general anesthesia, that small incision, and they drop it right in the ovaries, and they'll put it in both horns, and then they sew them up, give them a shot of antibiotics. 2 months later, you got puppies. One thing that's kind of different with your different kinds of inseminations is your due dates. So on a surgical insemination, you usually wait 48 hours after the initial ovulation begins, because they figure pretty much statistically everything's going to be ovulated in those 48 hours. Like in our progesterone machine, 8 is the beginning of ovulation. So, probably the next day it's going to be a 16 and the following day like a 32. So that's kind of the range we want to do the SI at. So when we figure her due date, we go back. Not that from the day of insemination, it's not 63 days from the day of the insemination, it's 63 days from the day of ovulation, even though they're just that much further, more developed, more ripe. So if you're wanting to plan a C-section, then you would go ahead and do your SI and then go ahead and plan on day 60, do your section, because she's going to have her babies she's going to go into labor on day 61. So day 60 should be the day before she goes into labor. If you're planning on a section, just I mean, this is all stuff. This is all the planning that you do before you breed. Getting in there, but getting the rapport with the stud owner, the planning, what that looks like, getting everything ironed out at that time, and then you can kind of start to plan. And then communication, everything.
So big, and everything that you do. I mean, communication is key all over the place. But so generally, people, it seems like newer people are probably just going to go for, this is a top 5 dog, and so I want to breed to that dog because it's going to give me great lines. Again, is there any online directory that has stud dogs in it by breed or anything like that where you can buy? And again, like, I just go back to cattle, there's just like catalogs you can flip through and find. Is there anything like that with dogs?
Well, so, I mean, you get, and like a lot of all the breeds, there's going to be like Facebook groups and, and you're going to go, so like, say I was wanting to do hunting dogs and I go, oh, all right, well, I want to go find out who's got the most field trial winners, which dogs are consistently producing those field trial winners. And then I'll go and say, well, this seems like this ties in good. It is, a if you have a relationship with your breeder, it's kind of like if you having your own children. If you can go ahead and call your parents and go, what does this mean? Do I need to go to the hospital? Is my kid messed up? I mean, those experiences, I think, say, you're going to need to do this, this, and this. You can this. That's really great. Once you start to go out onto the web, you're going to get more opinions. Some will be good, some will be opinions. Then you'll get you have to kind of decide where you're going with that. What do I need to do? Well, get your pedigree, get your pedigree out, look at your pedigree. Are we doing a line breeding? Are we doing an outcross? Is there something we want to line breed on? Are these dogs worth line breeding on? Do you have any information on them? Are they just names? When you've actually bred into the family, you go, oh, that's champion so and so. He was a beautiful dog. He had 3 sisters that were mismarks, don't double on him. Those are things that you won't find in pedigree. You'll only find by having experience with it. And that's where, kind of like, that when you can start doing research on siblings and you can start doing research on having, producing puppies and that kind of stuff, and like what you see coming of certain families, what you see coming of certain stud dogs. And then kind of like, what's available to you, what kind of access do you have, what kind of finances and so forth. I mean, if you get in with a breeder and you establish a relationship and they and they go ahead and say, I would recommend using this and this, and you do have to separate out competition. Like, well, don't breed to their dog. It's awful. Is it really awful, or do you just hate the people? Because if you just hate the people, that's really not a viable reason. I don't care who owns the dog. If I like the dog, I like the dog. It's like, if I might hate the people, but I love the dog, that's the dog you're going to use. I mean, that kind of stuff is like, okay, fine. I've sat ringside at National and ordered pedigrees on dogs that I thought I liked and bought dogs out of the country from what I've seen from those pedigrees. It's like, okay, well, that they're probably not going to offer that dog a set. I like that pedigree. I'm going to buy into that breeding, that bloodline. That's where you can look at the recipes that made that. And sometimes there is no rhyme nor reason to it, and they're just kind of like a beautiful little fluke, and that's okay too, but it's hard to incorporate that into a program as like a long-term plan.
So now say, okay, so we've, maybe we're the owner of a bitch and we're looking for stud, and we've talked about that a little bit. Now say we, opposite scenario, we have this flashy boy dog who we've bred to our bitches multiple times, produced some good champion dogs, really good. People start coming to us and they start saying, I'd love to breed to this boy. You've never done that stud service before. So what, as the stud service, what types of questions, what types of should you have to the people with the bitches? Where should your contract or your I'm putting my stick right here and I'm not moving off of it, and this is how I'm gonna do it. What should that look like?
So when you love the stud dog and you decide, all right, I'm going to breed this dog out, and sometimes it's for motivation of to get more puppies out of my dogs out there, an ego trip. Sometimes it's because I want the money, whatever the reason is, don't care. That's your thing. But you need to go ahead and when you're offering a professional service, you need to have protocol, how you're going to do it, what's going to be available, what you're going to be able, you need to have it like planned out. So if I'm going to do a natural breeding, or I'm going to breed my dog naturally to this bitch, I would ask as a stud dog owner, I want you to have a brucellosis test done on your bitch the week that you find her in heat. That's number one. You know, I want you to have that, because brucellosis is can be contracted through semen cattle, through being bred, and that will wipe out your whole kennel. That can wipe out, they'll take your stud dog out for sure. And anyway, so if you're taking an outside stud services, then you're going to do natural breedings. That's a good thing to ask. Have that. It's not an expensive test, just it's good kennel management. If you're going to take the bitch earlier and you're going to, you can do it for them and just charge for it, however you want to do it. Then you go ahead and so figure out, since I want people to I want a progesterone test done on the bitch. So if you're only going to do one, let her come in heat for a week and test her, because I want to know kind of where I'm at in breeding this bitch, because I'm not doing this for my health. I want it to take. So, because otherwise, people just put them in the yard and let them breed every day for 2 weeks. Well, then, well, you have a due date sometime in July. Congratulations. You don't know when, when, and if, it's like nothing. So that's kind of an important thing. I want to know that a little bit about the people, because now if you're going to do a stud service to them and you're going to send them your pedigree, what do you want? Are you going to let them sell them on open papers? Yes or no? Do you want them? I mean, because a little bit now you're endorsing them. That's just the way it is nowadays, folks. Sorry. You're involved with them, and you want to make sure that they're following the right stuff. You want to make sure that if they have that bitch in heat, are they keeping her put up, or is she going to come already bred to a dog they have? If it's going to later, these puppies are going to kick on DNA and you're going to be involved in the stupidity of that. Many, many, many years ago, I purchased a stud dog from out of the country, and he had been bred, and he had puppies offered that people were putting for sale on Puppy Find, available for export to the United States. And I had imported the dog, DNA'd him, and I knew he didn't produce those colors because he couldn't. But yet he had puppies for sale that saying that I'm like, those aren't his puppies. So I very nicely wrote the lady and said, hey, send them to the United States if you want to, but just be aware when they come to the USA as an import, they have to be DNA'd, and this dog's DNA is already on file. So tread lightly, because your customers, he doesn't carry those colors, so you want to make sure that what's getting bred to your stud dog is only being bred to your stud dog. And sometimes that's helpful to, keep a bitch a little extra time. When you're bringing in someone's bitch, I want them to be vaccinated. I like, give them a shot, give them a shot before you bring them. Because, basic stuff, worm them, vaccinate them, current on your flea prevention, and and then once you get her, know that she's probably not in her greatest state of mind, but you just really kind of keep a close eye on her, watch her close. Don't just dump her in with your dogs, because she's a nutball. And if she could get out and get away, that would be the time, and that would be the dog that would. You really have to be very mindful of keeping those bitches in heat. That's one thing. That's another little downside to it. It's really can be a pain in the butt. But that being said, you want to find out little fun things like, does she climb? The time to know that is not while you're chasing her. Well, certainly does. Those are things that you can kind of have a plan on. And when I do a natural breeding, especially when it's not my own bitch, I don't know her, I sit there on the floor with them until they untie. If I need, if you need to muzzle her, you need to muzzle her. Don't let her kill your dog. Don't get bit yourself. I mean, sometimes it goes really smooth, sometimes not. They're animals, you don't know exactly, but be prepared. Read the situation and be prepared. And nowadays, whenever I do a breeding for someone else, picture, text, puppy porn, your dog got bred. Mark your calendar. you know, because if you get the dog back and 2 months later, for whatever reason, she didn't have puppies, I sent my dog to Tyson, didn't have puppies, probably didn't. Well, there you go. Cover those bases, let them know that you did your part because, there's a fair amount of responsibility for it. So, what have you heard is the price of a stud feed? What's been told to you?
I haven't asked, so that's I don't know. That was gonna be my next question is like, what does somebody even charge? I mean, I would assume there's different prices based on different scenarios. So say if I have this 3-year-old male that somebody wants stud services from and it's natural, probably a lot different than it's like you want some semen that I have, some frozen semen that I have from this champion dog that I had 10 years ago. Well, that's probably a little bit more valuable depending on pedigrees too. So what is an average? I mean, how do you even figure out pricing?
So, what I've always kind of held as kind of in the old stud dogs, we would put our fee. And then sometimes they would put POL, and POL is pick of litter. So some people
I
would
was gonna
say,
go with proof of life.
proof of life. There you go. Hold up the newspaper. Um, but so if you do a pick of litter is worth more than the fee, but you have to wait 4 months. You're going to wait for if you take the fee, you take cash now. If you want pick of litter, you got to wait 4 months. So if you do pick of litter, that's probably going to be worth more than the fee. But you also have to then cover a few other scenarios. If you're going to do pick of litter, when must the litter be chosen by? Because it's like, oh, I owe you pick puppy Tyson out of this litter. And I'm sitting here and I've got 6 boy puppies and 1 girl. And I'm like, Tyson, are you going to want a boy or are you only going to want the girl? Because if you want the boy, I might want to start taking deposits on these boys, or unless you want a boy. But if you don't want a boy and you're only looking at the girl, kind of like have a little bit of a thing there. We're kind of thinking so you can kind of work a little bit together. I'm doing this and I would gearing towards wanting this or wanting that. And so, I mean, you can kind of, but have it squared away that by this age, I'm going to give you some, you can start selling some of them or you can start whatever. I mean, because people get irate when they have and this is problems. Oh, so many fights. I'm going to take a puppy. Well, then they do this and there's only like one good puppy. The rest of them are junk. And they're going to come in there and take the good puppy. Yeah, the pick a litter's hard, man. That's tough, especially in toys when you got limited numbers and that kind of stuff. If you're talking labs and there's 12, you go pull a yellow or a black lab out and it's like, okay, well, see how this comes, and off you go. When you've only got 3 chin puppies and one of them has a white ear and you've got one perfectly marked little female and the other one's a boy and you go, well, clearly that's what one they're going to take. And so people can go, well, I spent for a C-section. I did this, I did this, I did this, and then I gave it up. So really think long and hard. Is that what you want to do? Are you good with that? Because it might not be the puppy you want to part with. So
Well, and that could go both ways, right? If you do pick of litter and say the dog, toy breed has one viable puppy, it's just one, only a
only one.
singleton. There's only one puppy that lived out of the whole litter.
What are you going to do?
As the stud provider with pick of litter, do I want that dog or do I not? So now what happens if I do? Great, I take it. Well, now the person that they get nothing. They have nothing. They birthed this dog and raised it to a certain age and did all this and they got nothing.
Not exactly.
No, see there, wait, but wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. So part of your litter, part of your stud guarantee is that you get one viable puppy. So if I give you my one puppy, then didn't get a viable puppy, right? Then you owe me another stud service. That should
So
be in
things
your
that
package.
so
Yeah.
see that's
Yeah.
that's
So,
that's good
so
information to know. And
so if you want the one puppy, fine. Or if I'm the stud owner and you have one puppy and, if it's not an acceptable puppy, like, oh, Tyson, you got one badly marked male puppy. Woo, keep it sold as pet. Let's redo the breeding again and maybe we'll get better and I'll have something more to choose from. You can turn around and do those kind of things. But those are things that you need to kind of like have that kind of communication ironed out and up front. And it gets more complicated. So I would say when you get into those kind of dealings, you should have a relationship that is more than just business. It should be like someone that you go, oh, well, I would just give them the only puppy, or they would give me the puppy, that kind of thing. Because if you're actually like, I don't really know these people, and you're going to go that, I would only do a pick of litter, that type of thing, on a toy breed, especially if it was somebody that I was really tight with, that I really felt like I had a relationship with, and that they wouldn't like, just like leave you out to dry. But, so it's better. Best case scenario, pay for it. Pay for it and go forward and just do good with your litter and move on, to have it be a drive-by. But if you're going to get into one of those entanglements, that's where we start talking about all the co-ownerships and blah, blah, blah. Because all of the things like with the puppies. So, and you kind of need to touch base on this. Like, so if I'm going to take a puppy back from a stud service, does it carry your kennel name or does it carry mine? It's my puppy because it's out of my stud dog. Should it carry my kennel name? You bred it and raised it out of your bitch. Should carry your kennel name. This is before you do the breeding. You need to like hash this out. Like, I get to name my puppy. If I take a puppy for a stud service, it carries my kennel name. That you throw that out there front. Have these things be there so there's really have those uncomfortable conversations where you throw it all out there and in advance, so there's no one's going to be surprised or shocked.
yeah, that makes sense. And there's a lot of different scenarios, even with the puppy back situation, that could still run into what we've talked about earlier in the show. Is do you need more of that line? Like, do you need that dog to sire something that you need back in your line? I mean, maybe
Maybe.
you really like this bitch and you want that breeding, but maybe not.
If I see somebody's got a really nice bitch and I think to myself like, bring that over and breed to one of my nice dogs. I'll do the breeding for you. I would like a puppy out of her. They might not have the money or the inclination to do it, but maybe they would do it if I made it easy for them and I could pull a puppy out of it. That might be something. Or if I have this stud dog, if I've got this big win and Johnny come lately, I might be getting calls for people wanting puppies out of him. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go swing by your house and pick up my puppy back and I'm gonna sell it to them. I mean, all of that is viable. All of that the pick of litter has more value. So generally speaking, as for a price of stud fees, I would say that the average price of a stud fee is the price of a pet male. So, yeah, like in Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, you know, $2,500, $3,000 price of a pet male usually. That's about what you're gonna pay for a nice stud fee. If the dog has one produced big, super desirable, that's green with the purple tips, and they want, whatever, all of that could add to that availability. All of that could add to that. But generally speaking, that is the kind of the cash type of thing in there. The price of a pet male is about usually what the going fee is going into it, payable in advance, in full.
In advance, in full. Yep. No checks. Cash only.
Quick cash. We love
Cash, Venmo, PayPal, whatever,
that. Yeah,
friends and
friends are friends.
family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, but it is good. It is a good thing because the good thing about set services is you can see what your dogs produce out of a variety of bitches and you don't have to do all the litters. You can recoup some of the expenses. Your dogs can get production titles and you don't have to do all the work. You can make some great relationships with people. I mean, it also, like, if you have someone smaller breeders that can't keep a bunch of males, like, so we've always kept probably damn near too many males, but we've done that because we have had so many people that come back to us for stud service, come back to us for stud service, you know, because they can't, their situation, they can't have a bunch of peeing boys. So, okay, we're kind of the mothership, and so, and we kind of have an idea as to, like, well, Ralphie, he makes, you want short in your backs, he's your man, that kind of thing, so people who have had studs that have bred them a good bit, they can tell you what that stud can bring. And, like, well, if she has that fault, he's not going to help her, because the stud owner generally doesn't want you to have an epic fail.
Very true. So let's wrap this up by talking about, say you have this really solid stud, this really solid male dog, shows great, everything is great about him, produces great puppies, 6, 7 years old. How do you go about collecting semen? You can go to shows and get semen collected, or you can go to the vet, whatever. But I feel like it's a lot more viable and easy to do nowadays than it was 10, 15 years ago. Is that something that I know you've talked about? You ran across semen from a dog you had a long time ago, and it's like, oh, this is great. Is that something that if you feel like you have a super solid dog, like maybe I should collect some semen and keep this on hand for 10 years down the road? Does it last that long? Can you make it? How does thoughts
Okay,
on that?
so if you have a dog that you think, this could be a good dog, this could be a good dog. And especially if you're thinking, I might show him, I might let these other people take him and show him, a little insurance policy against time and accidents and all that is to have the dog collected and frozen. There are clinics called an ICG clinic, that or they'll go ahead and they'll go ahead and you bring the dog in. They run like a brucellosis test, and they do all this stuff, and they collect it, and it's marked and cataloged, and you pay a storage fee every year, for keeping it. And, you figure out how many straws you're going to want to, and the bigger breeds will give you more straws per collection. Smaller dogs are going to give you fewer straws. When you're doing a surgical insemination, 1 straw. When you're doing a vaginal insemination, up to 3 straws. It just depends as to how you're going to do it. But it's younger dogs collect better. So you're like, oh, wow, Ralphie's 13, you know, his semen's probably not going to be great. It's not as good. Do it younger. Do it younger. You're going to get higher counts. And then, because it's only going to come back at a certain level from frozen. So that's right there. And you need to, like, find the little rules of dealing with this clinic. Like, okay, at what point do I need to put in a notification? I'm going to need semen picked up or sent or whatever. And they send it in this big, it looks like a nuclear dome type thing where they've got the little thing there. And it's like they're shipped to, that costs you some money. You're going to pay a little money for that transport. Usually to have fresh chill collected and shipped out is going to be anywhere from $300 to $500, depending as to who's collecting it, who's packaging it, and where you're sending it. Have these all kind of in place. Like UPS in my town sucks. They're bad. I hope they go to business. They have, and they won't they won't ship animal semen. Like, no, not unless it's from a vet clinic, whatever. So they suck. But, you can, FedEx is usually good. Figure out, and then figure out, what time do I need to have it there? So Tyson says, oh, my bitch is going to be ready to be inseminated in 2 days. So, all right, he needs to tell me that so I can get it in the morning, get that done early, get it sent out, and maybe that you're going to have it the following day. I get a day and a half. It's only going to be good for so long in transport. Like, I had semen sent from out of the country, and they shipped it on DHL, and they got all the way to Ohio. And then DHL said, oh, we don't ship animals. And so they sent it back to England. Well, it was a 25-day tank. So they recharged it and they shipped it out again. And they had some other issue, and it got there on like the 20. Vet was at Disneyland, and she's calling her people. I'm like, well, that tank's been there 24 days. So they came by and recharged the tank so that the semen would not perish. So chilled, you need to kind of know within 2 to 3 days when you need to send that. And then you need to know how you're going to send it. You need to have that all planned out in advance. And you're going to have to figure out what it's going to cost. There's a box and they have cooler packs. Now, most of the vets that do repo work will sell you the box and they'll have the packs already frozen. They just put it in there, collect it, and put the extender in and box it up. And then you go right to the FedEx and get it sent out. And and I usually recommend sending it to the other clinic, especially if it's someone that you're charging a stud service to. That way you have a chance that they're going to handle it properly, unthaw it properly, and inseminate it properly. Because as you go away from that natural breeding in the backyard, you're dropping your success rate. So make sure that the handling and stuff is done by experienced people that have done this before. But the clinics that have done this before, canine reproductive clinics, those are the ones you're going to want to work with. That's where you're going to find your highest level of success. Shipping semen, frozen semen, though, that's something that, you're doing for yourself. You're doing for your own program. If you're thinking like, I always want a nice litter, then maybe you go breed to a good dog that, you can go do a natural breeding on. Yeah. Little lower commitment, little lower expense, that kind of a thing. You'll spend some money on the other. I mean, that's a big investment.
What do they charge like to store it? Like you said, a yearly fee. What does that look like? I mean, it's not like $5 a year. Like, what does the fee look like generally?
I have got semen stored, and it's usually a monthly fee, and it's probably, oh, depending how many straws, how much you got. It can be, you know, 10, $12 a month. It could be more, you know, that kind of a thing. It's just going to kind of depend as to how much, and it's going to depend as to like on your company. So like if you are in some major happening metropolitan area, like say Rapid City, South Dakota, you might not have as many options,
Or any? Yeah, I don't
or
even know really of any.
yeah, and they can charge you whatever the hell they want. So that's going to be that you're going to pay for that because there is no competition to it. You get some of the other stuff, like some of the dog show vendors that offer it, and some of the other bigger places. There was a horse place around here that was doing it. I don't know if they're still doing dogs because I think dog people are a pain in the butt to deal with. But it all depends. You're going to pay if you can get off the path a little bit and get in a little bit more of the equine, bovine type of mindset. It's cheaper, obviously, but you know, for your first breedings, I would say it'd be kind of nice to just go ahead and do a nice natural breeding, and something viable, something that you can have got a little bit more to choose from and got some more options.
Yeah, absolutely. I was more thinking like you have a super nice male dog that is like, you know what, I really want, 10 years down the road, I might, well, keeping that, keeping those straws, if you're
So
paying a monthly fee, that shit's going to add up quick, you know?
yeah,
Better be
yeah,
a nice damn dog.
there you go. There you go. I mean, it's got to be a really nice dog. And when you think about like, well, yeah, but I could go ahead and keep a son of his, and he's gonna last a decade probably. So, and I can breed to him all I want. So I mean, it's kind of a trade-off. Like if you have the room to keep dogs, if you can keep, like if you have friends you can stash them with, that kind of thing. I mean, like I say, the frozen and stuff like that, that is for special additions to your program. That's really something like, wow. And you do go into it with low expectations and lots of money. And as far as like fresh chilled and inseminations like that, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. I mean, it's not as expensive, you know, you're going to pay a little bit extra for that. And then, of course, your natural covers probably your best bet for sure. It's your highest conception.
And something like that is that kind of like the price is the price is the price. So if I were to get, frozen semen from, say, a black lab compared to a chin, is it pretty much the same price? But hey, with the black lab, I'm getting 13 puppies maybe, and on the chin, I'm getting three. So it's worth, on a black lab, the price is not nearly as high because the payback is a lot higher. I have a lot more dogs to sell.
Sure, sure. I mean, well, there you go. It's a trade-off. The stud fees don't usually differentiate a ton between the breeds. It's about the price of a pet male. But on something that's frozen semen or something like that, it kind of depends as to what the market will bear and how bad you want it and how bad they don't want it. Just let it go, all of that. Some of that's going to be, it's kind of on a wait and see. But you'll spend thousands on that, and I mean sometimes it works out great, and sometimes not so much, and you just kind of put your big kid pants on and go with it. But if it's real important to have them, like when I go ahead and if I'm gonna do a breeding on a bitch, and I want to take something that might be a lower conception type thing, might be a younger bitch, something that if she misses or it doesn't take, I'm not going to be devastated. I mean, if it's Princess's last litter, well then get your happy ass over there, get her progesterone done, and get her bred to a viable stud dog. Don't be pulling 30-year-old semen out and having it shipped around the world. You're just setting yourself up for more drama.
More tears when little princess doesn't take.
Yeah, here's for your pillow. Yeah, I mean,
All right. Well, if you guys have any questions, anything that this episode maybe brought up that you want to ask, feel free to leave us a comment or an email on the TACBox podcast at gmail.com, or go to our Facebook group. You can join the TACBox podcast Facebook group. You can ask questions in there, and Dale and I will do our best to either get them on an episode or answer them in the group there. This was a good conversation, Dale. I appreciate your time. I know everybody else does too. So please make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're almost at 100 subscribers, which I'm super excited about. We're getting there. So if you guys,
thing, the 100th person get a prize or something, or
I mean, we could probably make it worth something. I don't know. Like we could do, like
maybe do a shout out for them.
we could do a shout out for them or their kennel name or something like that, or maybe I can work with them on a discount on a kennel tag. Like if you want a kennel tag, your emergency contact, we can do something like that. I can make you one of those for the 100th. YouTube is really where we want to grow. So if you guys want to help us out, YouTube will be the best way to help us grow because you can watch, you can listen. It's on Google Podcasts as well, and it all ties to YouTube. So that helps us the most. And then once we get to a certain point and we can have you guys listening and enjoying the conversation, there's a little bit of kickback that we can get from it. And YouTube just seems to be the best with that because it's Google. So, but we appreciate all of you guys for being a part of our podcast and making this possible for us. I appreciate you, Dale, for taking the time every week and doing this with me.
good, Tyson.
Absolutely. So we will talk to you guys later. Thanks again. Have a great day.